You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone. You can have hundreds of followers, thousands of likes, a full social calendar, and still go to sleep at night with a hollow feeling in your chest that you cannot quite name. That feeling is not weakness. It is not ingratitude. It is not something wrong with you. It is the defining emotional experience of a generation that has more ways to connect than any humans in history, and is somehow lonelier than any generation before it. Loneliness is not just a feeling. It is a physiological state with measurable consequences for your immune system, your cardiovascular health, your brain, and your lifespan. And it is reaching levels that health authorities around the world are now calling an epidemic. In this video, you are going to understand why this is happening, what loneliness is actually doing to your body and brain, and what genuine human connection actually requires, because it is not what most people think. The first thing that needs to be said clearly is that loneliness is not the same as being alone. Solitude, chosen, intentional time alone, can be deeply restorative. Loneliness is something entirely different. It is the painful gap between the connection you have and the connection you need. It is a subjective experience, which means two people in the exact same social situation can have completely different experiences of it. A person at a crowded party can feel profoundly lonely. A person living alone in a quiet house can feel deeply connected. What determines loneliness is not the quantity of social contact. It is the quality, specifically, the presence or absence of relationships where you feel genuinely known, genuinely seen, and genuinely safe to be yourself. And that kind of connection, deep, mutual, honest, vulnerable, is becoming increasingly rare in a world that has perfected the architecture of surface-level interaction. Here is what makes this particularly alarming from a biological standpoint. Your nervous system was designed for deep tribal belonging. For hundreds of thousands of years, human survival depended on being embedded in a small, tight-knit group where everyone knew each other, needed each other, and looked out for each other. Exclusion from that group meant death. And so your brain evolved to treat social disconnection as a life-threatening emergency, activating the same pain pathways, the same stress hormones, and the same survival responses as physical danger. Loneliness is not a metaphorical pain. It is a literal one, processed by the same neural circuits as physical injury. And chronic loneliness, the kind that persists day after day, week after week, triggers a sustained stress response that elevates cortisol, suppresses immune function, promotes systemic inflammation, and increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, and early death at rates that researchers have compared to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. The social pain your nervous system generates when you are chronically disconnected is not designed to make you suffer. It is designed to motivate you to seek connection. It is an alarm. And like all alarms, the problem is not the alarm itself, it is what happens when the alarm keeps firing, and the connection it is calling for never arrives. So why is the most connected generation in history also the loneliest? There are several forces operating simultaneously, and understanding them is essential for doing anything meaningful about it. The first is the substitution of digital interaction for embodied connection. Social media, messaging apps, and video calls are not replacements for in-person connection, they are supplements to it. The research on what actually reduces loneliness is consistent and specific. It is face-to-face interaction, physical proximity, shared experience, and the subtle nonverbal communication, the micro-expressions, the body language, the tone of voice, the physical presence, that digital interaction strips away entirely. When you scroll through a friend's highlight reel, you are not connecting with them. You are consuming a performance of their life. When you send a reaction emoji to someone's story, you are not providing them with the experience of being known. You are leaving a digital footprint. These interactions feel like connection because they activate some of the same social reward circuitry, but they do not deliver the physiological benefits of genuine human contact. And the more time you spend on digital substitutes, the less time and energy you have for the real thing. The second force is the cultural glorification of independence and self-sufficiency. An entire generation was raised to believe that needing people is weakness, that asking for help is a burden, that vulnerability is a liability, and that the ideal human is someone who has it all together and does not require anything from anyone. That belief is not just psychologically damaging. It is biologically incoherent. You are a social species. You were not designed to be self-sufficient. You were designed to be interdependent, to need people and to be needed, to give care and to receive it, to be known and to know. The belief that you should be able to handle everything alone is not strength. It is a cultural wound that keeps millions of people isolated, not if they lack social opportunities but because they have internalized the idea that reaching out is a sign of failure. The third force is perhaps the most insidious, the loss of third places. In sociology, a third place is any location that is not home and not work, the coffee shop where everyone knows your name, the community center, the place of worship, the neighborhood bar, the local park where people gather regularly. These spaces, which were once the backbone of community life, have been steadily disappearing, replaced by online spaces that simulate community without providing it. When you lose your third places, you lose the casual, repeated, low-stakes interactions that are actually the foundation of deep connection. Because deep connection does not typically begin with a vulnerable conversation. It begins with dozens of small, ordinary interactions that accumulate into familiarity, and familiarity is what makes vulnerability feel safe enough to attempt. What does genuine connection actually require? The research is clear on this, and it consistently points away from grand gestures and towards something much more ordinary. Consistency. Showing up repeatedly in someone's life, not just in crises. Presence. Being actually attentive when you are with someone, not physically present but mentally elsewhere. Reciprocity. The experience of both giving and receiving, of both being cared for and caring. And vulnerability, the willingness to be honest about what is actually happening in your life rather than presenting the version that seems most impressive or most acceptable. These are not complicated requirements. But they are demanding ones in a culture that rewards performance over authenticity, efficiency over presence, and breadth over depth. The practical path out of chronic loneliness does not begin with a dramatic social overhaul. It begins with one relationship. One person in your life with whom you commit to going deeper, more honest, more present, more consistent. It begins with reaching out first, without waiting to be reached. With saying the true thing instead of the comfortable thing. With asking for something you need instead of pretending you do not need it. These small acts of relational courage, repeated consistently, are what begin to close the gap between the connection you have and the connection you need. And closing that gap is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity. Share this video with someone you have been meaning to reach out to, because sometimes the most important thing you can do for your own loneliness is to address someone else's. Subscribe to continue this journey, because the next video goes to the root of something that runs through every topic we have explored in this series: trauma, what it actually is, how it lives in the body, how it shapes every pattern we have discussed, and what genuine healing from it actually looks like. See you there.